You are on a cross-city train in the middle of the night trying to get some work done, talk to your friends, and have a dodgy kebab promising you a week off caused by free-flow diarrhea so you can stay at home. But before you can ingest the necessary pathogens, the train comes to an unexpected stop, throwing you and other passengers around, leaving you stranded in a forest without a cell phone coverage. Well, in this video, we will look at the wild, restless night of these passengers, look at the problems they face, and figure out how we can beat the creatures in Howl. Joe is a ticket inspector who works really hard to make ends meet. One day, he comes back home only to find out that his promotion request has been declined. His really annoying colleague has got the promotion instead and becomes his supervisor. On top of that, he has also been blackmailed by this new supervisor to substitute a late night shift for another colleague who called in sick. I guess the kebab strategy was too late. Well, with all these things happening, it seems like the only thing that is keeping Joe from quitting his job, or murdering someone, for that matter, is his fellow colleague Ellen, who he has a crush on. The train departs and Joe goes around to do his job, while not exactly being the nicest guy, because if you are having a bad day, you should always do your best to ruin other people's days as well. This always helps me to feel a little bit better about myself, and, well, it's just a good strategy. Joe is surprised to see Ellen and finds that this is the perfect opportunity to strike up a conversation. Of course, having had a bad day already, he picked the worst possible timing for this. She friend-zones him with a generic, "I'm sorry," ruining the last bit of hope he had left for today. Well, some say it was his fault. Now at this point, I would love to explain how to beat the friend zone, but this, my friends, well, I'm not a magician. When Joe finishes attending to the other passengers, he goes to take a well-deserved nap, but is woken up by a sudden stop of the train. He rushes back up and finds Ellen and other passengers have been injured in the process. He tries to help her, but this douchebag beats him to it. At the same time, the driver exits the train and finds the cause for the sudden stop. A deer was hit by the train. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I'm a big believer of making lemonade when life hands you out lemons. In this case, it would be a bonfire barbecue with some fresh deer and some vegan tier dressing. But that's just me. To each his own. Failing to pull out the deer, the driver hears noises from behind, but chooses to ignore them. A fatal mistake. He gets attacked by an unknown creature instead. And well, that's it for him. Now, this death is an important part of the plot, but let's break down the mistakes he made and see what he should have done instead. Well, first, why on earth would you not call the station for assistance immediately? You see, public transport drivers are obligated to contact the nearest station whenever an emergency breaks out. And almost derailing is a pretty big emergency, The driver should have at least spoken to Joe and other team members to plan their next move. Leaving the train solo, especially as the most important person on board, essentially being the captain, this is a terrible idea. I mean, what if the train was stopped by bandits? Or what if there were wild animals in the forest? It's a forest, right? Now, going out was risky, but going alone was stupid. Now, Joe tries to contact the driver but doesn't get a response, which obviously is a huge red flag. But of course, he doesn't think about that because there are more important things to do right now, like calling for help, which is what he does. However, he is told that help won't arrive for another 4 hours. He then breaks this to the passengers, who immediately start whining because for once, they don't get what they want and cause a scene. Which of course frustrates Joe even more because his glass has been overflowing for the better half of his shift already. And who could blame him, right? Now at this moment, it gets even worse, because the douchebag from before ignores the many red flags and suggests walking over to the next station. It's only a few miles, he says. Well look, a few miles in complete darkness, somewhere in the middle of an unknown forest, is pretty far. And considering that the driver is missing does not suggest that angels with puffy clouds are waiting outside to carry you. Now Joe, who is an absolute sucker for rules, disapproves and tries to convince them otherwise. But his self-image and self-worth have been shattered many times today already. So claiming authority over an idiotic group is not what he is about right now. Which leads him to open the door for them. A very critical mistake, unless of course Joe has already turned into a movie villain and hopes this loud group will be killed off so that he can peacefully enjoy his wagon to himself. Certainly, this would be me. Now generally, when there is a crowd of people having conflicting ideas, it is very important to assert dominance to make sure that the group has a leader to get back to for orders. Crazy as it may sound, this is the biggest, most fatal factor that made things go downhill. In the movie, Joe doesn't take initiatives, and this leads to many problems. He gives in to the pressure of the group, causing him to lose his authority. Anyway, if you're going to leave the train though, you should call the help center to inform them and leave a note with the general direction you're headed. What if you get lost or are attacked by wild beasts from the forest? The note you leave can be a make or break here. Also, before you leave, you should take a head count to make sure you haven't left anyone behind. Now once they have left, they hear noises coming from the bushes. Joe and Ellen both do the worst possible thing and go check it out. Now, I'm not sure why you would want to do that, but well, they go for it and they do find the mutilated body of the driver. It doesn't take long until the source of the noise draws closer, and to avoid a confrontation with whatever is out there, they run back to the train immediately. But the old couple, significantly lagging behind, is only barely able to make it. Now Jenny's leg becomes stuck and is bitten and scratched by whatever was chasing them before. The next few moments determine everything. First, lock the door immediately. That is your prime defense against this creature. Second, take care of the lady's damaged leg. Keep an eye on her. Will she be a burden if she survives? Can we throw her out as a distraction and run into the opposite direction? Can we carve caveman tools out of her femurs and shin bones? Well, these are all things I would consider. Now thirdly, stay away from the windows. Whatever is outside, if it can smash a human skull, best believe it will break through the windows and grab onto you like a clingy girlfriend looking like Gollum and forcefully loves you. 4. Keep the group quiet. I know witnessing this horror was difficult, but if they keep screaming around, I end up switching sides. And lastly, a train of this size must have some sort of tool somewhere. Emergency hammers, axes, screwdrivers, whatever it is, you gotta find them and you gotta use it. A few moments later, they start hearing banging and scratching noises from the outside. They manage to keep themselves quiet but are almost discovered. At this point, Joe decides to go to the driver's cabin to call for help again. But the only thing he finds is a destroyed communication device, implying that not only has this thing superhuman strength, but it also appears to have some sort of intelligence, a trait our characters do not have. At least so far we haven't seen any. Now Billy, one of the passengers, goes to check up on him and says that he could fix it with the right tools. Which in all seriousness is the best chance you have. You either escape with the train or you survive as long as you can until you are rescued. Fighting this monster heads on is probably a bad idea and should only be the last option you pick. When they go back to the group, they find a stable Jenny who describes that the creature is something more of a human, more like a man type thing instead of an animal, which, ladies and friends, is enough proof that some supernatural shit is happening, which means we should keep an eye on her because that chick got bitten. And being bitten by something supernatural is rarely a good thing. Now before they can continue this discussion, the monster prepares for another strike. All of our characters gather in the middle and surprise, surprise, a phone starts ringing. However that is possible, I don't know. But much more important now is the fact that all of them start screaming at her, thinking this is an efficient way to get some help. Not really. Now she stumbles backwards, closer to the window, and is attacked from behind as if she dropped a piece of soap. Look. This opportunity won't come again, and if I were there right now, I would split away from this group and look for my own way out. These people are deadly, and if you want to find success, in this case survival, it is better to walk alone and mind your own stuff. At least that way, if you get killed, you know it was your own fault. Now Joe, out of the blue, opens up a full case of useful tools like axes and hammers, which has me wondering, well, why now? But I stopped questioning stuff in my line of work a long time ago, so let's continue. They finally make some good moves and arm themselves. They also use the train's furniture to block the windows. After they're done, Adrian, the douchebag, makes a pretty good point. He tells Joe that Jenny has become a liability and that they should get rid of her. But just at this moment, she starts spitting out blood and her teeth fall out as well, which indicates only one thing: she is turning. Now, Adrian is clearly selfish, but he's right. They don't know what is hunting them, and if she becomes a monster too, they have serious troubles. I mean, it's obvious that she will. Duh. I understand that sacrificing her would mean that the group's trust will break, therefore it might be wiser to tie her down until they know for a fact what is happening, but they shouldn't just ignore that fact. Now, before they can act on any of that though, they hear noises coming from the next coach again. They realize that the kebab guy has once again effed up and needs some help. But before Joe manages to open the door, the creature swiftly attacks the kebab guy, and we finally have one thing less to worry about. The monster doesn't give up easily, and when it enters, it's stunned by the many people around. This is a huge chance, and the group for once actually can achieve something. They X down the creature and win, basically. Good job. Okay, but after killing it, you must observe the creature carefully. This is not a human, we don't know how it behaves. And you better double down as well, right? Just to be sure. Double tap always. Decapitate that thing. When the group inspects the creature though, they see that it has the same general structure of a human while also having features in common with wolves. The teeth, the eyes, the triple jointed legs all confirm that this is a werewolf. If that is the case, then you better find some silverware. If werewolves are real, so are the things that can harm them. Although axing them straight into the head seems to be doing pretty well, so you might just continue doing this. Alright, now with all this evidence at hand, the group should realize that having Jenny unsupervised is a huge risk. If killing her isn't something they want to do, at least have her tied down. Put a gag in her mouth and keep an eye on her all the time. I mean, if she turns too, we are done for. In all honesty, having her spitting out blood and losing her teeth in the scene before was enough to realize that it's happening, right? Now, while she is clearly morphing into a werewolf, at this point, her husband is still protecting her. Now, Adrian rushes forward and tries to kill her, but given how poorly he had been treating the group, he ends up being tied down instead. Which is not the stupidest move they have pulled so far, but still pretty dumb. I mean, as much as I hate this guy, it is totally clear what is happening. We already have enough on our plate, and having more trouble inside of this wagon will only have us killed. But for now, the creature is dead, and the group feels confident in fixing the leak outside. All of them split up and take on different tasks. Okay, since they know what they are going up against and have weapons for self-defense, fixing the train isn't a bad idea. But the big mistake here is how they divide the responsibilities. Why would two people stay inside the control room? Make yourself useful and go out for help. The most important task is fixing the train, and while only one person can fix it, it should be even more important to have that person secured at all times. If Billy is lost, so is anybody else. They should have untied Adrian instead and had him and Joe guard Billy outside as well, and Matthew should have stayed with Kate to supervise Jenny. That way, if anyone faces more werewolves, they can outnumber them while at the same time put all their effort in getting the train to work again. Now, Joe gives an improvised "let's kick some ass" speech over the intercom to start their terrible plan that becomes more terrible by the second. Billy, the mechanic, and his partner find out that the leak is right underneath the entrance doors, which makes fixing it much more efficient and safe, in theory. Because it doesn't take 2 minutes and Matt here runs into the forest, leaving Billy behind because he has heard some screams for help. I'm not sure what this guy thought, but it wasn't much, because that's a ridiculous move to pull. Leaving the only person alone who can actually fix this whole mess while running into a werewolf-infested forest, I don't know, it's not a smart thing to do. Eventually, he finds one of the girls being eaten alive and gets what he deserves in return, being eaten alive as well. Boom, Matt is dead. And meanwhile, inside the train, Jenny completely transformed into a werewolf as well, which, as we all know, wasn't necessary if they took action before. Now, Adrian, still tied up, begs to be untied at this point, but Kate doesn't listen. For whatever reason, I don't know. But there is so much wrong here, I couldn't possibly list up all the mistakes that are being made. But one thing is clear. Billy, being the only one who can fix this train, is the key person here. They should have made sure that he is safe at all times, while at the same time avoid being targeted themselves. But anyway, when a train is being rebooted and the lights are back on, Ellen starts the engine immediately, without waiting for Billy. Literally the only guy who has showcased some brain activity so far. But luckily he manages to lift himself up and hold onto the train just in time. On the inside, Jenny finally breaks loose and attacks the characters in there. Now Kate, once again, avoids taking responsibility and unties Adrian at this point, so that he can do the job basically. He takes his chance and runs away to avoid being killed. At this point, I can't even blame this man, can you? But saving others would improve his own chance of survival, so running away is a bad response nonetheless. At the same time, a werewolf from the outside breaks a window and tries to pull Kate out. Now Adrian, being the resentful person that he is, takes the wrench from her and, kicks her out. Now, genius move. The next genius move we are allowed to witness is that the old man is still attempting to keep his now werewolf wife safe, which of course is ridiculous and ends up in him being eaten as well. Now she leaps for Adrian's neck as well, but is stopped by Joe, who stabs her with a metal bar. Now for some reason they start fighting each other, which is ridiculous because you're attacked by superhuman monsters. Now Adrian thinks though that if he can leave him behind, Joe, he will delay the werewolves enough so that he can escape successfully. Which, as we've already concluded, is a bad strategy because you're always stronger in a team. While they're arguing in the most intense and most important moments, Adrian exits the train while locking Ellen and Joe in. Now luckily, Billy, the mechanic who everybody has forgotten at this point, joins just in time with some handmade torches he crafted with the leaking fuel. This gives them enough time to escape, which results in Billy being caught instead. Well, what goes around comes around, although not for this guy, he was nice. At this point, Ellen and Joe run into the forest, but realize that they can't outrun the monsters. Joe sacrifices himself in order to delay the monsters so that she can escape and be safe. He passionately kisses her, stays behind, and does what every other simp would do: die for a chick that had rejected you. So, the only person who can survive this night successfully is Ellen, because the next day, Adrian is killed by werewolf Joe, and that was it for him. What do you think? What would you have done instead? What do you think our characters did wrong? Although, I guess there's many things you could list up. Yeah, anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again very soon. Binge another one, and take care. Peace.